Hello and welcome to today's webinar. Thank you very much for joining us this morning. Let's go ahead and kick this off. Today we're talking about new solutions for connected classrooms and hybrid learning. My name is Jackson Root. I'm on the marketing team here at DTEN, and I'm joined, as always, in our webinars by Scott Krickerberg, our head of strategic alliances at DTEN. And we have some really great guests today on today's webinar. We've got Tom Schaefer Jr., from Cape Cod Community College. He is the Associate Professor of Language and Literature, and he serves as the college's remote education coordinator and part of the teaching and learning faculty there. And we have Patrick Stone, the Director of Strategic Communications and Marketing, also from Cape Cod Community College. So really incredible conversation we're going to have today. So thank you again, guys, for joining us. Before we jump in, just a couple of things. We do have chat disabled in this webinar just as a best practice. But if you have any questions at all, and I really hope you do, please use the Q&A function. Right, it's usually a really great way for us to kind of slow down some of the topics we might be running through really quickly. Also, if you have any questions for Tom and Patrick while they're going through some of their story at Cape Cod Community College, please throw them in there. We want to hear from you as much as possible. So thank you very much for that. So today we're going to be talking about hybrid learning. We're going to talk about the hybrid classroom, some strategies to keep in mind when you are deploying your hybrid classroom. We're going to talk a lot about what Tom and Patrick are seeing and have seen both before, during, and now after the pandemic at Cape Cod Community College with hybrid learning and HyFlex. We're going to talk about outfitting spaces for success with intuitive collaboration technology from DTEN and Zoom rooms. And then lastly, we'll have some room at the end for Q&A if we don't get to it during the main presentation. So also I'm going to throw a couple of polls out there as well. We definitely want you guys to be involved as much as possible. So we want to hear some of the challenges that you've seen with hybrid learning, HyFlex. We also want to hear some of the benefits that you're excited about in HyFlex. So keep an eye out for those polls as we move through. So one thing we talk a lot about at DTEN is this the IT challenge, right? This is what a lot of you guys are facing going into hybrid learning, into HyFlex. Certainly, Tom, Patrick, I know that we've talked a lot about some of these challenges, right? This is the challenge to facilitate productive collaboration and communications while supporting faculty, supporting students, ensuring positive learning outcomes with all of this technology that we're bringing in. And lastly, making it very easy to teach and learn from anywhere with simple and intuitive solutions from DTEN. A lot of these now we're talking about in a kind of a different light with HyFlex, but the outcomes are the same. So Tom, Patrick, is this sort of aligned with some of the challenges and what you're seeing in your institution?
Patrick, you want to go? Go ahead.
Sure. Yes, Jackson, it really does. And especially what we were seeing at our institution, really the beginning part of this process, what we were seeing at our institution prior to the pandemic. As a community college and a relatively small community college amongst the 15 here in Massachusetts, we have still several thousand students that we serve, and over the course of the past, really at this point, we're probably close to 2 decades. Online learning has become more of a want and more of a need from our students, and more online learning and that expectation of being able to flex and have classes available in schedules and in formats that match the student need has become more and more prevalent. And leading up to the pandemic, this was already an issue on our radar as to how do we continue to evolve and meet those needs of the students, because as those needs evolve, so too does the technology needs. And so too, as does that mean we need to secure the technology in the campus? We need to train the faculty members, the staff members to use that technology effectively to bring it to the students. So, we were careening towards this this sort of evolution in higher education learning even before sort of the world got flipped upside down. And through the course of this, we'll talk about how that changed for us. But Tom, really on the front line to this as the person that was helping lead that charge from the faculty side. Tom, what did you see as you were onboarding this as the person actually in the classroom working with students?
Oh, I mean, the difficult part, as I'm looking at this graphic here, is that all of this stuff is predicated upon the idea that people have bought in across the campus, that they've bought in throughout the whole system. that students know what they're getting themselves into when they sign up for these different types of courses, that, you know, faculty are not only supported, but they're also, you know, willing to take on the challenge of learning new technology, what that means to kind of to go through the lift of trying to place that technology inside of their content and their teaching. You have administration that's willing to you know, make the expenditure and do some of the upgrades that are necessary to spaces. So we got really lucky in a few different ways. It was this sort of perfect storm of timing, and there was buy-in in different spots all across campus. And so as these things were able to connect so quickly, in part, I guess, the silver lining of the pandemic that happened all at once, we've been able to not only make the transition into a new modality at our particular college, but also see that the upgrades that we were looking for technology anyways were going to be made easier with this particular, you know, hardware. So we got lucky because the buy-in was all the way across the board.
That's great. No, that's really great to hear. I know that we're going to talk a little bit more about this when we dive directly into your case study a little bit more. But thank you very much for that input. So I know that, right, a lot of the benefits of adopting some of the technology we're going to be talking about this morning align with sort of the strategy of picking technology solutions. Certainly Zoom and Zoom rooms, right, fall right into this, where it has to be simple, it has to be flexible, and it has to be powerful. And I think these three main aspects of any technology that you're bringing onto your campus make it very easy to reduce some of that friction to adoption, for faculty to just sort of accept the technology. If it's simple and flexible, they know that it works for them and it works the way that they want it to be used. We can talk a little bit more about that in a second too. And I think there's a lot more benefits here that we're going to kind of just scratch the surface on. And certainly when I throw a poll at you guys in a little bit later, I want to find out from you what main benefits of hybrid learning and HyFlex really are in your mind, right? If you don't have any of the technology we're talking about today on your campus, you know, what is it that you're looking for? Are you looking to make it easier to adapt to different learning styles of students, to offer synchronous, asynchronous, face-to-face learning, you know, lesson plans and saved content and saved whiteboarding sessions and annotations? Right, there's so much here that we didn't necessarily have 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago. It's really a whole new world. So we're going to talk specifically about. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Tom.
I was just gonna kind of back up that previous slide where, you know, people will often think that this idea of HyFlex learning and hybrid learning is as simple as doing the normal types of teaching that you're doing, and you just flip on some basic camera in a classroom and you're giving people access. When realistically, the HyFlex as a modality, the ability to have hybrid learning for students, is so much more than just what the hardware is doing, but having really good hardware helps, right? So, you know, other colleges around the state are adopting HyFlex models as we've done as well, and they're trying to make their technology work for them. But I think one thing that has helped, and this is going to sound like I'm selling the product, right? But I'm really not, is that because it's such an easy device to use, when we're talking to professors who have been teaching for 5, 10, 15, 20 plus years, you're not just teaching them how to use a piece of technology. That's a small part of it, right? Like how does the DTEN itself work? How does the D7 or the D7X itself work? But at the same time, you're then able to talk to people about how they're doing their teaching. What kind of placement do they have inside of a classroom? Are they being more active with their teaching than maybe previously? Is this sort of learning modality going to work if you are a lecture-based teacher, if you're clicking through PowerPoints and things like that? So it's really been great because we also were able to find a piece of hardware that allowed us to make this happen at the same time. So it's been really helpful for us.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you for that. I think with that, right, and Tom, you're touching on a lot of some of the challenges I think that you've been able to overcome. Let's hear a little bit from you guys that are attending this webinar this morning. What has been the greatest obstacle in adopting collaboration technology at your institution? So let me launch this poll. And please add your input. So is it securing buy-in and commitment from administrative staff? Is it adapting to new technology among faculty? Is it actually getting adoption and buy-in by students? Is it something having to do with bandwidth of your actual IT and AV team? Tom, I know you're gonna have something to say about that a little bit later on.
Sure.
Is it just the cost of technology solutions, right? Bringing it onto campus seems like a little bit too much of a price tag. Maybe something else entirely. So thank you guys for your input. I'll leave this up for a little bit longer here. So I definitely want to hear from you. And I'll share these results in just a minute too, so we can talk about it a little bit. It's pretty interesting. All right, let's take a look. So you guys are seeing the results here. It looks like the number one obstacle is adapting to new technology among faculty, right? I think that's going to align directly with what we're about to talk about in a minute, followed closely by the overhead and bandwidth of IT and AV staff to actually deploy the technology, and then buy-in from administrative. So interesting. Thank you guys. Really appreciate your participation on that poll. So let's jump right into Cape Cod Community College. So very, very cool story here. So Patrick, do you want to tell us a little bit about your campus?
I will gladly tell you a little bit about our campus. So we are Cape Cod Community College in Massachusetts. Most people, if you know Cape Cod, you know us as a tourism destination. You know us as a place that people travel from, especially New England, to go during the summertime. But it's a heavily populated pocket of Massachusetts with a very unique landscape, both physical landscape and socioeconomic landscape. We serve about 3,000 students when you count up our credit and non-credit students, and you see the pieces of technology that we've been able to deploy here. And I call special attention to our actual service area. So we're one of 15 community colleges in the state, and that includes the islands of Nantucket and Martha's Vineyard. And I bring this up because this is sort of a direct match with the technology and the growth and the style of learning that we have here. Prior to a lot of these changes, to bring higher education to those islands, where there again we think of those as being places that people travel to, but those are people's homes. There are people living there that require access to higher education, and we have a fair amount of students that take classes there. It was very difficult. We had a site on the high school on the island, and that's really how we did it before. It was sort of old school patching in with computers, and then Zoom to a certain extent. But this has really opened up our opportunities to literally stream education to folks living on an island, literal islands. So I like to call a special attention to that because it really has helped grow our access to education for those folks. And if you go to our next slide here, you can see just exactly what it looks like on Cape Cod. There we are. So we are on the so-called arm of Massachusetts. We're right in the middle. And really what's unique about Cape Cod and the service area that we have, if you look to the lower left, you see where it says Falmouth up to the very end of Provincetown. The Cape is very densely populated. We're literally separated from the rest of the mainland of Massachusetts by bridges. And so those folks who live in Cape Cod are themselves sort of on an island. And while you think that might be sort of easy or sort of convenient to get around, it's very difficult. So to go from one end of the island to the of Cape Cod to the other on days with heavy traffic, say like right now in the summer where folks are going to the Cape to vacation, it could take 3 hours. There's not very many thoroughways through. You see Route 6 that kind of cuts through. So it's difficult to get around, and transportation is a significant issue amongst our student population. And so to sort of paint the picture of the community college landscape, our average student is not, as you might think when you think of colleges, 18 years old, coming out of high school, ready and raring to go for their 4-year education. Our average age student is about 27. Our students are working. They have multiple jobs. They are balancing families. They're balancing lives. education and higher education is just a part of what they have going on. And many of our students have difficulties, financial difficulties and mental health difficulties that make higher education difficult to balance and prioritize sometimes. Among those, as you're looking here again, I'll cite it: transportation. Getting to campus to access higher education is really difficult. We have public transportation, but as those who have done it before know, you can't simply just hop on a bus and expect to get to class 25 minutes later. It can take a really long time. So as we entered the pandemic several years ago and looked at what did our students need, and this is where the marketing person comes in. This is why I'm here, because as behind the scenes, Tom is and our faculty members are doing all this amazing work to revolutionize the way we provide online education. From a marketing standpoint, the college was in a really strange spot especially during the pandemic, where recruitment barriers and access to education suddenly were down, and all of a sudden the world was completely online. And when we're all doing the same thing, community colleges, four-year colleges, online universities, we're all kind of offering the same thing. It was very easy, and we found it was very easy for colleges to sort of become part of the wallpaper. A lot of the messages were the same. Every college is doing flexibility. Every college is doing online learning. Every college is offering essentially the same thing. And when you're a community college and you're up against huge powerhouse four-year or online institutions that are swinging around a lot of money, we had to stand out. And when we were watching this integration of DTEN technology and the launch of HyFlex learning, and the idea that in our classrooms, you weren't just on Zoom, you were allowed to figure out on a day-to-day basis whether you would Zoom or attend in person, that was an immensely important moment for the college in terms of how we recruit and how we bring students to our front door, because suddenly within our local region, we were able to say, this takes transportation off the table as a barrier. Now, if you can't come, or you have childcare, or your job gets in the way, you could take one of these classes and it's not going to stop your progress. Your faculty members, in fact, have designed courses to make sure that it'll work for you one way or another. And you're going to get more than just the Zoom education. You're going to get an extremely high quality education like you were sitting right there. And then if you come back later that week, we'll see you later that week. So locally, it was a game changer in being able to talk about the ways that you could work around some of these challenges in life. And then extending out as our service area sort of extended, we have a location, an aviation maintenance location in Plymouth, which you could see up there in the upper left-hand corner. So it's off Cape. And we have another location also in Bridgewater State, the university, which is also that way. We're implementing that technology there too. That becomes more of the online learning piece. So we're able to extend and offer these different services that other colleges weren't able to offer. And when we looked at our recruitment message during that time, and then moving forward as we have for the past couple of years, we're able to stand out. We're very aggressive in our marketing message. We like to speak truth to what makes us special and different and unique. And this has been a huge part of what we've done over the past couple of years. And, in large part, thanks to Tom's work and the work of the faculty members who have moved this forward, we have been able to say out loud proudly that we don't just say we offer flexible education. We are revolutionizing flexible education that you frankly just can't find within the competitive range of universities and colleges in our service area. So it's been fantastic.
Yeah, great. Amazing. Yeah. So you guys really pioneering in a lot of ways HyFlex learning on your campus.
Well, and on top of that, it's then how do we make sure that message we send is genuine? Like how do we ensure that the product that students are getting in terms of how they're learning is going to be equitable when they're at home versus when they're sitting inside of a classroom? And so, I think that kind of points to that answer from the poll, right? Where there's a lot of faculty hesitance, not just about how do I push these buttons, but also then, is this going to trip up, my content delivery? Is this going to dramatically change the outcomes of my classes? How is this going to become a detriment? And that's the first thought. It's not how am I going to utilize this as a strong tool. It's how is this going to become detrimental to the thing that I've been doing for X amount of years. And so, part of that buy-in is, first of all, just having the perspective that technology is just that. It's just a tool. It's for us to be able to tinker with the classroom space rather than completely try to, you know, overhaul and revolutionize it. It can overhaul a space for sure, and that's actually how we've been able to you know, update so many of our classroom spaces, is because of what, you know, what the hardware itself can do. But it's not going to be this thing that's going to take this really successful professor and make them this obsolete, you know, just content knowledge person in front of the classroom space. And so there was a little bit of explanation with how that, you know, that perspective is real for us, and trying to get people, you know, on board that this is just the thing that they can try, and to see if it's something that they would enjoy and appreciate. And then from there, it's about really strong training. It's about making sure that people are collaborating, especially on the faculty level, that we feel like, you know, as faculty members, that we're able to speak to each other about the ups and downs of our day-to-day, you know, existence in the classroom, how it's being affected by the hardware, and just how that makes us sort of feel like we're being successful or not. You see the infographic on the screen, and that particular piece, which is it's already actually a little bit out of date, so we have to update that, Patrick, right? We'll write that one down. But it's important for us to realize that there are these simple steps to getting the hardware to work for us, and then from there you're teaching as you normally would. You're doing the same maneuvers as a teacher as you always would, but you're getting this heightened version of it, right? So you know, the blackboard, the whiteboard feature, I use the night mode myself. That's why it looks like a blackboard for me. The whiteboard feature, the ability for us to, you know, take notes and draw diagrams, and be able to, you know, have students collaborate on this particular feature, and then save it and send it out and post it to our LMS for future use, or to email it to students if that's how they prefer to receive their information. You know, these features, as I guess, you know, basic as they are within the classroom space, is another way for teachers to realize that you're not reinventing the things that you're doing. You're thinking about the major maneuvers that you make as a teacher or professor, and then how does that become a digital equivalent in this type of space, you know? And most professors are doing really basic things, like they're talking, they're having conversations with students, or they're either lecturing, right? And so the quality of the microphone really helps, the ability for people to see because of the quality of the camera. People are doing, you know, group work in classrooms, so the integration of breakout rooms inside of the Zoom room software is really helpful. The ability for us to use the whiteboards and to save them and to share them. So many of the features that you're already doing are there. You just have to figure out how that's going to work, and to then take away some of that fear that this technology is going to ruin things or change them so dramatically that you feel like you're powerless.
Right. Yeah. Thank you for that, Tom. Pretty amazing. You know, I think there was a really good question in Q&A about like a specific example, and I think you just covered quite a few of them, which is, you know, having the whiteboard as part of your lesson, saving that content that you created in the actual class period, uploading it to the LMS, right? Making it very easy for students to just take the recorded lessons that you recorded directly from, say, a D7, like we have in the picture on the left, right? And you're recording it directly with the microphones, the camera on the D7, the shared content directly on screen, and then making that available for on demand, right? You're recording that session. Again, you can upload that to the LMS, make it very easy for students to access that lesson, you know, after the fact. Very cool. And I thought that the printout, the piece of paper printout, you know, the 5-step guide, I thought was really innovative for you guys, right? It seems like kind of a no-brainer, but certainly I haven't talked to a lot of faculty that have done this so far, or administrators or IT administrators even. And I think it's important because it's something tactical that you can hold in your hands, right? It kind of, if you're a faculty member and you might be a little bit overwhelmed by this technology, having this piece of paper is a very simple guide on how to get it to work the way you want it to work get to work the way that it's an extension of the way that you are used to teaching. You've been teaching this way for decades. I think that was a really amazing solution for getting faculty on board.
I have this don't print the internet rule. It's sort of like one of my personal rules, you know, that if there's anything I can access still on my phone or a tablet or something, I'm not a big print the internet guy. But you would be amazed, no matter, even if people that share similar types of rules to me, because we have a range of faculty that have been teaching here, for 30 plus years. We have faculty that have been teaching here less than 5 years, and every single one of them at some point has said, well, where's the infographic? Where's the paper? Like, it's this one sheet of paper seems to be this thing that brings you back down to earth, and helps you feel a little bit more grounded with balancing out these unbelievably intelligent, knowledgeable content people with using this one piece of paper to make them feel better. We have, as Patrick mentioned, we have an aviation maintenance program, and we actually have a hangar at an airport in Plymouth, Massachusetts. And a lot of those instructors they're instructors second, they're content experts first, right? So when we're working with some of these folks, they can fix, the 737 jet engines, they can fly helicopters and do all kinds of amazing things. But when you put, what we know as a fairly basic, intuitive piece of technology in front of them, they fall apart, which to me is just mind-blowing every single time. But as they, again, they've got that piece of paper, they're working through the basic steps of how that will get them to a learning space. It all of a sudden becomes much more clear for them. It's really
what we've noticed is a lot of the anxiety is just around those first steps, right? The integration aspect. Once you kind of have that sigh of relief that your meeting's online, you can see yourself, you hear, once you get past that, I think collaborating, sharing content, right? Whiteboarding, there's a lot less anxiety about the content part of it, right? The teaching part of it, because you've already checked off those boxes, right? There's a much better comfort level of kind of exploring and advancing, right? The use of the technology once you're in there and you feel comfortable.
Patrick, do you want to explain what this picture, especially on the right, is here?
Sure. So, first on the left, this is an example of one of our DTEN units in our Science and Engineering Center, alongside one of you can see it's one of our science labs with many skeletons and lots of different science stuff going on in there. It just about every room in our Science and Engineering Center is equipped with one of these DTENs, which is a really cool space, especially where you have students sitting at little lab stations. Lab stations that can hold 2 or 3 students a piece. And to watch it from the student's perspective, it was interesting to me that when you're viewing in that classroom view, it's picking up all the faces in the room, can see the classes in the room, and it sounds like you're in the room. And I think that was what as I got comfortable with the technology and how it looked and sounded, I thought that was one of the things that floored me the most was the sound quality for those at home. That this wasn't like a Zoom room where you're one of 25 people, and if someone's in the back, you're gonna have a tough time. It really was like you were there, which was very cool, especially in that kind of space. And then the photo on the right is a photo of that's on the left side of that photo is our president, John Cox. And that is a student in our robotics laboratory who is presenting his final in our robotics program from last spring. And what they have is a robot. They have several robots in the classroom, but this robot in particular was programmed by these students to play a game of Pictionary. And this was their final project. And so you can see the robot there is, he had a mechanical arm and is drawing on the whiteboard space on the D10 a photo. And as he'd start to do it, you would guess what it was drawing. And it was very cool. The students did a great job with it. And, again, I think sort of struck us as what a fun, unique way to use technology. And the program director for our robotics class is much like Tom and others, just a phenomenal educator and resourceful and fun and the way he uses technology to keep students engaged is unbelievable. And this was a really great use of it. And it was fun to go down there and watch it in action. And as these students were getting used to it, and I think that's even these robotic students who are literally making robots that are, being programmed to do very specific things, they were learning this technology as well. And I think, for the students that we talked to really got a kick out of it, and, acknowledge that this is a good way to integrate education technology like this with their practical robotics and engineering technology that they'll be using in their own lives.
So great. Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much for walking through some of these use cases. I think we talked a lot about some of the benefits that you found with HyFlex on your campus. And I think, we want to hear from the rest of you guys that are attending the webinar. Among the many benefits of hybrid learning and HyFlex, which is, if you already have some of these on campus today, or what could be the most impactful in your institution. So go ahead and launch this second poll. Here it is on screen. So among the many benefits, is it providing live classes and lessons online? Is it enabling recorded and on-demand learning sessions to students? Is it being able to easily share lesson plans, whiteboard sessions, annotated presentations? Is extending reach to non-local international students? Is it reducing costs for students to attend? Maybe the benefit is for faculty, right? Making it much easier for faculty to teach flexibly, whether they're at home, or maybe they're nowhere near campus. Maybe you're bringing in faculty from another state, or maybe you're bringing in faculty from another country even to teach a class. One thing that we talk about with a couple of schools is that they wanted to bring in foreign language instructors, but their campus might not have like a Japanese teacher that lives close by. So they're able to bring somebody in from out of state that could teach like Japanese or Russian or some other language that maybe they might not have access to. So I'll leave this up for a couple more seconds if you guys want to add any more of your input here. And it's looking like the main use case is providing classes and sessions online. So that makes sense, right? It's the bread and butter of this technology, absolutely. So extending reach to non-local international students, definitely great. And then increasing flexibility for faculty, I think also is really important. So thank you very much for that. So now we're going to talk a little bit about some of the actual technology. We're going to run through some DTEN solutions. Tom, Patrick, please weigh in, as much as you'd like to. I know some of these solutions you've definitely tried in your campus, some of the new stuff you haven't tried yet. So definitely looking to hear from you. So as we go into this, right, this is creating the ideal hybrid classroom. As we know nowadays, we talk about hybrid classroom, we're talking about both in class and, at home for many students, or at home for faculty as well. So let's talk about the D7X. This is our flagship all-in-one, comes 55-inch and 75-inch, right? I know some of the photos that we were sharing a minute ago, I believe that was the D7. There may have been a D7X in one of those photos. This is the one that has a built-in camera on top, has built-in microphone, built-in speakers, 4K touchscreen display, built-in Zoom rooms software. The new Android also has Teams software built into it as well, if you're trying to offer both Zoom rooms and Teams on campus. So we saw in some of the use case photos a minute ago, typically you guys mount these on a cart. So Tom, what's the benefit of the cart?
So I really need to steal that picture you have there, because the way that a room is set up, it actually goes to one of the questions that's in the Q&A. The way that a room is set up is so much more important than I think a lot of folks at a college will give it credit for, right? So if you're thinking about how facilities has to maintain a room in a certain position, right? There are things for security reasons, right? And IT and AV groups have set up rooms particularly for their reasons. And for 50 odd years, we've talked about the need for active teaching and for people to be able to move around the classroom space. And we're talking about learning styles inside of the Q&A, I'll give you a really quick example. When I'm putting through my faculty through this training that we've put together for this particular mode of learning, so many of them often are brought right back into teaching the people that are in front of them, rather than understanding that they also need to be teaching to what I call the green dot, right? The little green dot that's next to the camera at the top of the D7. And they're forgetting that simple things like saying words like this or that when pointing to a whiteboard or pointing to a specific object isn't necessarily gaining the connection for the students who are remote, who are sitting at home. If you're standing up in front of the whiteboard, let's say you have the whiteboard feature on the D7 and you're talking about the notes that you've just written. If you're pointing at a specific word there and you're saying, this idea, the students who are in front of you are going to get it, but the students who are at home are not going to see what you're doing. So, annotation feature within the whiteboard is really useful. But even then, when you look at this picture here, this graphic here, the way that the camera is angled within a classroom space will create points where students that are remote will be able to see you more or less. And again, sometimes when you are doing various types of teaching, students being able to see you talk and use hand gestures and to have facial expressions and the way that your tone is working, and if you're interacting with students or things that are in front of you, that's going to become more or less important to those remote students because they might need or not need the connection that you're trying to make with those ideas. So as we're starting to put these faculty through this training and just having them think about these concepts, about the difference between pointing at something and saying this versus circling it and annotating it on the whiteboard, you're getting people to also start to tap into what students' needs are more than what their needs are as faculty, which for a lot of faculty can be, including myself, when I was first really trying to figure out how this model was going to work with this particular piece of hardware, like how is this something maybe that I've never thought about before, but maybe I've never thought about it because I wasn't thinking about student needs as much as I should have been, or I wasn't as in tune with what various students were going through inside of the classroom space. And so one thing that's really been great, again, about the D7, D7X on our campus is so many of our faculty have begun to rethink what they thought were really small features within their teaching and their content delivery, but actually have been big time game changers for students who are needing to go home for a week because of some issue that's happening, or they have car trouble or whatever. And that student just doesn't know what it means to be an equitable learner on the other side of the camera versus in the classroom. And so if we start to really raise our awareness as faculty about the needs of all these students at once, it's actually then heightening the experience for the students that are in the classroom as well. So it's making us better teachers to be more thoughtful about these things than just, again, simply rolling something in on a cart. And we put it on the cart specifically, again, for its mobility aspect and for teachers to be able to move the D7 around the room to better suit their classroom, size, the space that they like to have. We all know, on college campuses, that you're never going to get this sense of uniformity with furniture, right? So sometimes you'll get tables of different sizes and shapes, and it never perfectly aligns with the way that you want to teach or even the subject that you're trying to teach. So for us, putting the devices on carts was pretty smart because it allowed us to, at first, when we had fewer devices, move them around and utilize them in lots of different spaces and ways. But even now, as we have, close to 4 dozen of these devices across our number of campuses, we're seeing that it's just helping within the space for people to more and more specify how they want the room set up for them, their teaching, their students, and what their students need.
So cool. No, that's amazing insight, Tom. Thank you. While you were talking, I was flipping through a couple of use cases here. And it is really great to hear you talk about that marriage of the student experience, the faculty teaching style, right? And we saw some use cases in art colleges. We saw some use cases in a Royal College in London. Here you're seeing on the left like a demonstration of screen printing, right? So it just so many different types of students that are at the campus for different reasons, learning completely different subjects, whether it's art or language or mathematics, and they're going to use this technology in drastically different ways. So here's just a couple more really neat use cases here of the D7X on a cart, right? And it just adds so much flexibility, so much mobility to the solution. And you can see there on the bottom right, there's the instructor speaking directly to the D7, and that's kind of an interesting placement as well, where it's almost like the D7 is placed as a student, almost in line with some of the desks in the classroom.
Yeah, we've had conversations about that, you know, as the amount of faculty who have gone through our training have, you know, gone through multiple semesters now. We've been using, oh gosh, we've been using the D7 inside of classrooms since the fall of 2021, I believe, the fall of 2020 or 2021. And we've had, again, across the curriculum, all different types of experiences. I mean, all the way from our funeral services professors using it in lab space, and imagine what they're doing in those lab spaces, all the way to, you know, we're teaching history courses and psychology courses. And then when we were able to come together and have discussions about, well, where are you placing it in the room and what are you using it for and how are you doing it? You know, all of our different perspectives and our thought processes help us to not only imagine what it could be if we try different things, but also reimagine some of the biases that we might have about, you know, how students are interacting on the board, on the D7, if we should face it more towards the students. Even I'm going to probably get the name wrong, the multifocal mode that's built in, where the camera is able to chop up the space and get individual photos of the students in the classroom. Some people really love that, and other faculty really don't. And it's all for the ability for us to say, well, it doesn't mesh with X, Y, and Z within what we're doing. But because it's such a flexible device and it can do these things, it's adapting to what we want rather than us having to adapt to it. So that's been a big help with trying to get more and more faculty to see its value and its use.
Awesome. Another cool use case is putting it on stage next to a large screen like in a lecture hall. I know USC uses it this way. It's the photo on the top right. Zoomtopia last year, they used it that way as well. I think it's 2 years ago, maybe. They brought Richard Branson in remotely, and they took that video feed and they also brought it onto the big screen there as well. Pretty cool. I want to talk briefly about a new thing that's coming out. And Tom, I know you haven't had a chance to try this, is the new View Pro. So D7X Windows Edition. These are 2 cameras that you can put on the side. So if you have one of the newer units, it already has a socket built in. It's very easy to install on some of the older D7Xs as well. What this does essentially, it adds 4 more cameras to the system. So you now take what is a 1 camera, 4K camera in the middle of the D7X. You now have 4 more cameras. And each side now has a wide lens and a narrow lens. So it will allow that multi-stream, you know, Tom, I think you called it a multifocal mode. What this does is it allows a lot more camera versatility to grab students that are in the room, whether they're in the back of the room or they might be like off to the side of the device. With all 5 cameras now, it's really easy to capture like up to 9 participants in a room on screen, perfectly framed, in crisp clarity, because there's some logic built into the D7X when it brings in all these video feeds and in Zoom rooms, and it's seeing the same person picked up by multiple cameras. It can determine which one has the most clarity at distance. So really an amazing solution. There's really nothing like it at all. The View Pro, it's available today. If you're interested, check it out. We'll have a link at the end of the webinar too if you want to try it on D7X. We have that available as well. But this is really a super cool solution. And the last thing before I jump off this one is you can see the placement of it is low, right? It's not at the top. This is important because a lot of times the cameras at the top will give you that kind of overhead shot. Or if you're standing in front of it, like it's like a forehead cam. Whereas these ones on the sides of the device allow a lot more of that camera versatility. And also when you have it mounted at seated height, like in a focus room or a little study room, it allows for eye-to-eye meeting experiences for students, faculty, peers, for group projects with any students that might not be on the campus at the moment. Here's another shot of kind of the way that coverage works with the View Pro. So essentially combined with the 5 cameras, you get like 160 degrees of coverage. And you can see that even if you've got like a U-shaped table in front of it, it allows for that very wide coverage of students or faculty might be in the room, but like very close to it. You can stand almost to the side of it and still be in the shot. So another cool solution too that we want to talk about, and Tom, I don't know if you've tried this at all, is DTEN Onboard. And this is essentially your standalone companion display. Throw this thing on a cart, you roll it into a room, set it in companion whiteboard mode with your existing Zoom room setup. And you have a dedicated whiteboarding, blackboarding, collaboration space. You can also use it for additional participant view if you want to just have a lot of students in the class for like a main, larger lesson. It's lightweight, right? It's super easy to move around, it's super slim. Anybody can roll it between classrooms, both Wi-Fi and Ethernet. Literally just plug this thing in and connect to your Wi-Fi, and it's ready to go. So it has built-in Zoom rooms, companion whiteboard software built into it as well. It's really a cool solution for just adding whiteboarding and presentation space. So the last thing I want to talk about is the Mi Pro. So the DTEN Mi Pro came out a couple years back. It's our 27-inch, sits right on the desk. This is a really great solution for your faculty that are at home that might not be able to come into campus, or you throw this in your executive office. It has built-in personal Zoom rooms meeting software, so you can launch a whiteboard session directly on here. If you're in, virtual office hours, for example, you can bring up that whiteboard sessions and work directly through a certain problem, or you can bring up presentation and take directly on screen, literally the screen of the actual Mi Pro. Really cool feature in the Mi Pro as well is called Smart Connect. This is a USB-C out of the device, goes into your laptop. It allows you to access the camera, speakers, microphones, and touchscreen display as external peripherals from your laptop. So just a lot of versatility there. If you have hot desks on campus as well, this is a great solution for that. Tom, have you had a chance to try the Mi Pro at all on campus?
I haven't. It was something that I had talked about with some admin folks a couple of years ago, actually, and they steered me away from it because I'm wanting all these devices. Of course, my office is only so big, right? But actually, one of our former executives did purchase one for herself, and she absolutely loved it. The ability again for it to sort of give you this much larger touchscreen kind of extension of your desk has been really something that she appreciated. But no, I mean, if you want to send me one, of course.
Cool. Awesome. Well, let's talk after the webinar. The last thing I want to talk about is DTEN Orbit. So I know I meant to talk about this earlier in the webinar, but DTEN Orbit is a really, really cool platform. It's our cloud-based user and device management platform. And with DTEN Orbit, you can remotely manage your entire fleet of DTEN devices. You can check firmware versions. You can check device health. So if there's anything wrong with your DTEN devices, like for example, let's say the camera system goes offline or the microphone's bugged, it'll actually tell you that something's wrong. And in most cases, you can remotely fix and repair. You can also provision all of your licenses. So if you only have so many Zoom Rooms licenses, but you have more devices on campus and you need to shuffle your licenses around, you can do it through DTEN Orbit. And we have paid plans as well that allow for advanced parts and replacement. So if there's anything wrong with the device, we'll ship you a new unit before you get it back in the mail to us. So that's all about reducing device downtime, making sure that your rooms are always available. And there's never a moment where like the unit is just dead, right? We don't want that ever to happen. So, Tom, I know when we were talking earlier, you mentioned Orbit. One of the great benefits of that is it allows for a much smaller overhead of your IT teams, right?
Yeah, I mean, what you just said, by the way, is not just a claim for people to know. Like we have had an instance where we needed a specific part And it was here, the very next day, early in the morning. It got to us very quickly when one of our units went down. So having Orbit's been really helpful for us. I mean, Patrick can speak a little bit more to the ability for us to, be able to recruit people within IT and how that works. But it's just really difficult for us to have a very big help desk type of IT support team because of where we are and because of the ability for people to balance, income and affordability. So when you have something like the Orbit system in front of you, and you've got one person, two people who can monitor all these devices from one location, especially when we have these devices in other campuses that are 30, 40, 50 minutes away from our main campus, it makes things a whole lot easier for us. And then, utilizing Orbit's not just knowing that there's a problem, but it's also about doing the troubleshooting. So it's been able to help us do some troubleshooting to, external campuses without having to get in the car and drive all the way there and have a person, use half of their workday just to see what's wrong with one basic device.
Yeah, I think Tom just hit the nail on the head there. I think, it is a growth area for how we can, potentially recruit, much like we saw earlier with the D10s being able to recruit more students because of the flexibility. There's obviously growth opportunity for people to come have employment opportunity for farther away and being able to get the best use out of technology. There's especially in a field dealing with technology, but having the system right there where you can, to Tom's point, you can not have to spend your day traveling is enormous. I mean, that's for staff, especially IT staff that are so stressed out and so overloaded, and certainly ours are, like most other colleges, IT departments are. That's huge to be able to have that type of flexibility built into your day.
So cool. Well, check out D10 Orbit. Right, this comes standard with all of our devices. It comes with a free version of D10 Orbit, which will allow you a lot of the things that we just talked about. But it really is a very cool platform. And I think with that, we're pretty much at time here. We've got a couple minutes if there's any remaining Q&A. And Scott, I know you want to talk a little bit about our Engage program with Zoom.
Yeah, sure. So D10 and Zoom are working together to give you a chance to take these things for a test drive in your own environment. I'm sure these guys will agree. You can watch slides, you can watch videos, but until you put a touchscreen in your environment and you are collaborating and sharing content, right, it's just a completely different experience. So there's a QR code on the screen. You can scan it with your phone, choose the use cases that you want to try, and we get you the devices on site so you can use Zoom rooms and D10 together to kind of explore which use cases you want to deploy, what makes sense for your specific school or organization, and we do that on a free trial basis. So we've had over 500 customers, including large universities, all the way down to just a couple devices to deploy hybrid work, and it's very successful for our customers. So feel free to scan that, sign up, we'll reach out and get you set up with a device right there on site.
All right. Well, with that, Tom, Patrick, thank you guys so much for being a part of our webinar this morning. And of course, to all of you tuning in, thank you so much for sticking it out all the way to the end. We're here to answer your questions. Definitely reach out to myself. My email is jackson.root@d10.com. Scott's is formatted exactly the same way. Don't hesitate to reach out. We're here for you. So with that, thank you guys so much. This will conclude our sort of series of EDU webinars this summer. We'll have many more throughout the year. And keep an eye out for this recording. Will be available on YouTube, our YouTube channel very shortly here. So thank you guys again, and have a fantastic day.
Thank you.
Thanks, Patrick. Thanks, Tom. Thanks, guys.
Yeah.